Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Wednesday night, February the 26th, here from Indianapolis, Indiana, where the NFL Combine continues in earnest. Always good to have you guys in for another episode of the Primetime Show. And we got news this morning about 10 minutes before Abdul Carter, a potential option at the number one overall pick, a definitive option at the number one overall pick, made his way to the podium. Adam Schefter, first on the report that Harold Landry was being given permission to seek a trade. So I'm going to give you some details, additional details on that and how I think that's all going to play out. We'll also talk about players elsewhere in the NFL who have been given the opportunity to seek a potential trade, and should the Titans be interested in any of them. We got rising and falling at the end of the show, as is the custom, and always a good time. We've got certainly some conversation to be had about rising stock and falling stock, although the workouts will begin in earnest tomorrow. Hell, by the time we do primetime tomorrow night, we might be able to talk about some of these workouts definitively. We got our first taste of prospect interaction today, as I mentioned, and there's a lot of stuff to dive into because the news is everywhere, and maybe even some potential Titans nuggets by the end of the week that I might just have for you later on. Before we get started, need you guys to share the broadcast around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Wherever you're spending your time with us, we do always appreciate when you share the program. If you're on Twitter, you know the routine. Retweet the show in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you're hanging out with us on Facebook Live tonight, you can share now to public. That's in the bottom left. And if you're on YouTube or Twitch, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that little thumbs up button. Do it again. I'll remind you again throughout the course of the show. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, text the link to a friend, tell them to do the same, and we'll get this thing off and rolling and talk about Harold Landry on this Wednesday night. Welcome into A to Z Sports Primetime from the makeshift Zen Sports studios. We're obviously here in Indy. I'm your host, Buck Rising, and I'm proud as always to be presented to you by Zen Sports. Promo code ATOZTN gets you in on all the action. ZenSports.com to find out about their VIP players, giveaways, and all the great sweepstakes offers that they have. ATOZTN is how you get that $100 no danger first wager. Two Rivers Ford helped me get up here, and they always make the car buying process fast, easy, and more fun. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. By TrueMath Fitness in the Gulch, where you go for your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled or repeated, just the best at TrueMath Fitness. And Bart Durham Injury Law. You deserve to be paid. Make sure you get the compensation that you deserve, courtesy of bartdurham.com. So at about, I guess it would have been 7:50 a.m. Central Time, 8:50 a.m. No, I've got that even more mixed up. I've been struggling. It's only an hour difference. I don't know why I struggle so much with this, but at 6:50 a.m. Central Time and 7:50 a.m. Eastern Time, Adam Schefter put out a tweet. Now he, and I will read you exactly the tweet from Adam Schefter about Harold Landry, but essentially it was a report saying that the Titans were giving giving Harold Landry permission to seek a trade. Here's the specific language. Titans have granted permission to former Pro Bowl linebacker Harold Landry to seek a trade per sources. Landry started all 17 games last season, finishing with 71 tackles, 9 sacks, 18 pressures, and 4 pass deflections. The pressures, it depends on where you look. Pro Football Focus has him with 30 total pressures last year. Pro Football Reference has 18, but we can work our way through that together. The 28-year-old Landry has 31 and a half sacks in his last 3 seasons he has played and is due a $17.5 million base salary this season. So the question becomes this: your Two Rivers Ford take here tonight on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Fair or foul? The Titans giving Harold Landry permission to seek a trade. You guys give me your response, and I will give you mine momentarily. Right after I remind you that Two Rivers Ford always goes above and beyond to make your car buying process awesome. They win awards for their customer service. That's just how good they are. I've been a Two Rivers Ford customer for almost a decade. They've been in business for almost four, over four, as a matter of fact. Two Rivers Ford, go check them out. They will certainly not disappoint. They're just 7 miles east of Nashville International Airport in Mount Juliet off Belinda Parkway. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. So, fair or foul, Harold Landry being given the opportunity to seek a trade. Now, I think a lot of people saw this and said, "Well, why does Harold Landry want to trade? Is he tired of the losing? Is he trying to get out of Tennessee? All these different things." And I said, "No, no, no. That's not what's happening here. The Titans, Mike Borgonzi, Brian Callahan, their respective staffs, they're interested in moving on from Harold Landry. But because Harold is the longest tenured player on the roster, and because Harold is a good soldier and perpetually available, he's a hard worker and, not any kind of a problematic personality like Harold and his representation are being given the opportunity, hey, we're probably going to cut you if you can't find a trade. But we would like to give you the opportunity to seek a trade because we would prefer to trade you as opposed to just outright releasing you if there's an opportunity for us to get some compensation back. So you go explore the market. Let us know what you're able to find. We'll see if a deal can't be done. And if not, we'll move on from the contract. It could also be, so that's option number one. Option number two is that this is a negotiation tactic and they give Harold the opportunity to seek a trade. They use it as leverage ultimately for Harold, who I don't think wants to go anywhere. I have no doubt in my mind that Harold Landry wants to win more football games than he's been winning here in the last couple of seasons. But I also know Harold has a young family and a house that he very much likes and is a bit of a homebody, for lack of a better term. It would be significant for, at this stage of his career, to uproot everything that he and his family have going on in Middle Tennessee and to go play somewhere else and potentially not play for the Titans are the worst team in football, so it'd be tough for me to argue that he might not end up in a better situation, but you never know. The grass is not always greener, even in a situation like this where you're leaving Tennessee, because Tennessee could do a couple of things right. Now, I think it makes the most sense to renegotiate Harold's deal because he is currently 2 years left on his contract, but this year would be the year for them to move on from Harold. It's a built-in 2025 out. And so I personally would prefer them to, see what Harold finds. If he's not interested in leaving, then he can take a pay cut. If he wants to stay. If not, they can trade him or release him. And that would be the most logical situation moving forward. But the question is fair or foul. And I'll tell you why it's fair here in just a second, because I think a lot of people would look at it and be like, why would we get rid of good football players? We do that already. Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown. I had somebody tag me in a tweet today comparing this to trading A.J. Brown, which is, of course, nonsense. And I'm going to explain to you why. Obviously, that's different. But why specifically Harold? It's okay to envision a world without Harold Landry. And I'll do that right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress from the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators. So here's why it's fair on Harold. And I'm using Pro Football Focus. They have Harold with a significantly greater amount of pressures than in the Adam Schefter tweet. But, teams grade these things. Outlets grade these things potentially different. Harold had 9 sacks in 2025, started all 17 games, which matters, 83.1% of the defensive snaps. But for the money that Harold is making and for the amount of time that Harold is on the field, the production needs to be more. Now, people look at 9 sacks and be like, oh, if he's just healthy, he'll get 10, he'll get double digits. We need double digits. Sure, I understand that, but this Harold Landry's pressures do not indicate that Harold Landry is specifically the reason why he got 9 sacks last year. 30 total pressures, which is not enough, 4 pass deflections, and that 30 total pressures, if you put it in, and again, I did this on Pro Football Focus this morning, if you stacked it up against every defensive lineman and every edge player in football last year, Harold Landry would rank 104th. Now, I know it's not just about getting to the quarterback, but that's obviously a big piece of this, and Harold was not doing that effectively enough. 104th among qualified defensive linemen and edge players. You got to have more than that for $17.5 million. Harold is obviously a versatile player. He drops into coverage. You're not replaced. It's going to be tough to find somebody who does all the things that Harold Landry does. So it's not just one statistical category that you can look at to determine it. But the most important thing that Harold should be able to offer is the ability to get to the quarterback, and he just hasn't been good enough here in the last couple of years. Now, could he benefit from adding an Abdul Carter with Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry and all these things? Of course he could. And there's still some logic to say, all right, for less money, Harold Landry makes a ton of sense, but not for the current amount of money that he's making right now. So if they can get a 6th-round pick for him, maybe, I think it's wishful thinking to think that they could get a 5th-round pick for him, because that team, without eating salary, right? You don't want to have to buy up a better pick to eat money against the cap just to move Harold Landry. In an ideal world, I'd be good with a late day 3 pick for Harold Landry, because he's not a premier. He's never been a game-changing player, but it's definitely started to fade here in the last couple of years, and there may be reasons for that. And they certainly could stand to be better around Harold and all these different things, but that's kind of where I'm at with Harold Landry right now. So I think it's completely fair. Some of you might disagree with me, but the Titans are obviously looking at any number of situations, and they are, it seems, comfortable envisioning a world without Harold Landry in 2025. Now, Harold's not the only player who's been given permission to seek a trade this offseason, and Burton has compiled a list of players that have done specifically that, or have been granted specifically that. And I will get to that here in just a second, right after I ask you which of these players that I'm going to ready. Well, I'll just name the players now so you can give the potential answer. Of players who have been granted permission to seek a trade elsewhere: Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford, Deebo Samuel, Rams guard Jonah Jackson, defensive lineman Jonathan Allen, Jair Alexander of the Green Bay Packers, and Patriots defensive tackle Davon Godchaux. Which of those players would you be interested, or should the Titans be interested in acquiring in 2025, if any? You may say, no, none of them at all. Whether you're out on Kupp or Stafford or Jonathan Allen at this point in his career, which of those players would you have interest in if you had interest in any of those players who have been granted permission to seek a trade? We'll talk about it together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Zen Sports. Promo code ATOZTN gets you in on all the action. Zen Sports is the best in the business. They make the betting process even more fun, and they will help you get in on all the action on all your favorite major sports. Promo code ATOZTN is how you get that started with that $100 no danger first wager. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789 at Zen Sports. So before we talk about this, and as you guys fill in your answers, I want you to watch this full sit down that Mike Borgonzi did with Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network, because I do think there are some interesting tidbits in here that might help inform how you answer this question. The question is, which of those players that I just mentioned, Kupp, Stafford, Deebo, Jonah Jackson, Jonathan Allen, Jair Alexander, and Davon Godchaux, which of those players, if any, would you be interested in seeing the Titans pursue a trade for? This is Mike Borgonzi's sit down with Ian Rappaport.
All right, well, let's get right into it. You guys hold the #1 overall pick. Yeah. I think everyone here is asking about it. What kind of conversations have you had centered around the #1 pick, and where do you guys stand as far as, are you going to make it or not?
I think we're still early in the process right now. We've evaluated all the tape. There's more tape that we have to kind of get through, but this is like a very important time for us. This is a touch point for us where we get to really meet these players for the first time and sit down and talk with them. So I don't think we're anywhere near making a decision if we're going to stay put and make the pick or trade out. It's early on in the process right now for that decision.
There have been times in the past when leave the combine and deals have happened. I believe the Bears-Panthers deal happened a couple days after, like a week maybe after the combine. Sounds like, not putting words in your mouth, but sounds like this might take a little more time for you guys. I mean, obviously given new staff, new people to kind of get solidified as far as what you want to do.
And I think so, because that's a great point you made. It's a new staff for me. I'm getting to learn the staff. So I think we're going to need this entire process really to get through to make the best decision for the team. And like I said, there's a lot of more information gathering that we have to do here over the next month and a half.
Do you have a sense of this draft class in general? You know, they all have strengths and weaknesses. They have different positions bet on that. Do you have a sense early on what this draft class is going to look like? Because whether you're picking one or anywhere else, like you're going to get a chance at some pretty good players.
It's a good class, and we just went through phase one, we call it, of setting the board. We went through the whole meetings with the college scouts, and the one thing that stands out once you look at the board is there's a lot of depth at defensive line, you know, edge rushers, running backs. You know, I think there's some good tight ends in the draft. So those are the kind of the groups that stand out just visually looking at the board after we set it too.
So you are in a unique situation. Obviously, you start your new job. Your old team was playing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Lost, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Can you take me through what the last month was like for you? You take a job, so exciting, coolest thing ever. Your team's playing the Super Bowl, but also they lose. Like, what has this been like for you?
You know, it's so much different when the coaches finish out the season, then take a new job. So if you get a new GM, you kind of get thrown right in the middle of it because it's an important time in the season. So it's been tough to explain to people, but, you know, for instance, I was in Dallas at the East-West in my hotel room watching a playoff game there. I'm in Nashville in my hotel room watching it with my family, the Super Bowl. So it's definitely been it's been strange.
Well, let's focus on your new team for a second. You know, you guys, obviously, the record is what it is. You're picking number one for a reason. I mean, it sounds like a simple question, but where can this team get better?
You know, as we looked at the roster, there's a lot of places we can get better. You know, particularly in the trenches. You know, I think we want to try to build O-line, D-line. So we're going to attack this thing, whether it's through free agency or the draft here. But I think it all starts up front for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, having a draft class that seems to have that sort of talent level is probably a good thing.
Which is a good thing. Yeah.
And then, you know, on the quarterback, obviously Will comes back. Had some moments last year, had some not good moments last year. I think it's fair to say you guys are in the quarterback market on some level. Where does that stand as far as your acquisition for whoever may or may not end up being your starting quarterback for next year?
Yeah, you know, I've had conversations with Will. I did Will come out of Kentucky. You know, he's got a lot of talent. So we have one quarterback on the roster right now. So eventually we're going to have to either add through free agency or the draft. And I think it's going to be competition, whether it's through free agency or the draft. But when I had sat down with Will, I talked to him. I said, listen, we're going to give you every opportunity to compete with whoever we bring in here.
So that is Mike Borgonzi on the NFL Network yesterday with Ian Rappaport. If you didn't get enough Borgonzi there, you can go check out the interview that I did with him via the podcast on the radio show's podcast page, Buck Rising Show, the Buck Rising Show, I suppose. Anyway, that helps inform this portion of the conversation because I just don't envision a scenario where they're going to give up real draft capital, like real draft capital, right? Because they only have the the first round and second round picks right now. They do not have the third round pick currently. They do not have a sixth round pick. They have 2 7ths at this point in time. So they're in a pretty strapped position as far as the draft capital. Now, could you trade a 7th round pick for any of the players that I just mentioned? Kupp, Stafford, Samuel, Jonah Jackson, Jonathan Allen, or Jair Alexander, Devon Godshaw? Sure, you could. And all of those players have accomplished a great deal, from, you know, Super Bowl champion to offensive MVP to Debo being just an offensive freak. Jonathan Allen has obviously had a great career, if not a great last season. But I don't know. The cupboard is pretty bare in free agency to begin with. The draft kind of aligns, I think reasonably aligns with, I mean, they have needs everywhere, right? So, like, no matter what they pick, it's something that they need. And I would include running back and tight end and corner and anything else in that mix because they're just not good enough anywhere to turn their nose up at any good player, any good, young, cheap player. So I personally don't think that they would be in on any of those players that have been granted permission to seek a trade. But, you know, I mean, I don't know. Jonathan Allen, I know he's coming off of torn biceps and coming off some of his career worst production. And the fact that Washington is comfortable moving on from him does not necessarily inspire confidence. But he's not an overwhelmingly old player. He's drafted in 2017. He's 30, going to be 31, if I'm not mistaken. if there's something there. But even then, to Borgonzi's point that he brought up in that interview, the draft is deep at edge. And so you may not need to do that if you prefer to just go get a younger player who's got a higher upside and can potentially provide you with longevity, as opposed to these are more stopgap type situations. And Stafford would immediately be the best quarterback available if he was truly available. But it doesn't seem quite real. I know the Giants and the Raiders have really spun it up, and Matt Stafford apparently, I missed this news earlier today, but apparently Matt Stafford had some kind of meeting with Tom Brady at Tom Brady's home in Montana. I don't imagine that Tom Brady and Matt Stafford are both in Montana at the same time and just happen to run into each other. If you've forgotten, Tom Brady is a minority owner in the Las Vegas Raiders, and that has a great deal of impact there. So something to keep an eye on at this point in time. But right now, I just don't see them being in that specific side of the business. But, time will tell, and we'll get through the combine, and perhaps that changes, because there are a lot of conversations, a lot of those conversations, obviously, happening here in Indy this week. All right, rising and falling before we put a bow on this thing for the afternoon or evening, rather. Whose stock rose? Whose stock fell this week in sports? Let me know in the comments section. We will discuss right after I remind you that the primetime program is, of course, made possible by True Math Fitness in the Gulch. Players working it out at Indy, you can work out in Nashville. You can get the best workout in Nashville at True Math Fitness. Your first class is free. Group fitness classes are awesome. Personal training, even better. And the open gym for you to work out at your own convenience, on your own schedule, with one of their great and cost-effective memberships. Go to truemathfitness.com for that first workout free. All right. The person who I think I'm most comfortable saying stock up with right now is Abdul Carter. It doesn't sound like they're going to trade Myles Garrett from Cleveland. Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have been, almost definitive in the fact that, no chance. Like, we're not entertaining anything at all. Now, maybe they're just not getting good enough offers. So those things are always subject to change. But Stefanski's talking about he's in line to he wants Myles Garrett on the team for years to come, not just this coming year. And Andrew Berry has definitively said, it's not even worth entertaining because we're not trading Myles Garrett. So that helps Abdul Carter as far as the conversation around the draft pick at number one, because it kind of takes the Browns out of the running for a defensive end at 2 or an edge player at 2 if Myles Garrett is still there, and he is, and still under contract, as he is. So I would say Abdul Carter, who spoke to the media today, stock up. And he was asked a question specifically about the idea of going as the number 1 overall pick.
First, how much do you want to be picked first?
It's very important for me. That's one of the goals I made before the season. Something I always talked about. It's what I work for. And I feel like I'm getting close to that. Just got to keep working, keep putting the effort in, and I'm accomplish my dream.
How realistic do you feel like it is to go number 1 this year?
I feel like it's very realistic, and I feel like I'm the best player in the country, and the best player should be selected number 1.
Have you met with the Panthers?
Very definitive, very matter of fact, and it's possible that he's right. Travis Hunter is a unique player, but I don't know that he's the best corner or the best wide receiver, even though he can do both. Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, if there was a definitive statement on them with a team picking at number 1 overall, there would be no conversation about Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. We would know if either one of those quarterbacks were definitively worthy from the NFL's standpoint of the number 1 overall pick, just as we did with Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence, or how many different quarterbacks could you name that we've known prior to All-Star games, prior to Senior Bowl, prior to any of this, that they were going to go number 1 overall. This year is different, and it doesn't mean that those players won't have successful NFL careers or can't, exceed the level of expectation. Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, all these different kind of players. It's not like it is something that cannot be accomplished or has to definitively means that those players can't be high-level NFL quarterbacks. But there's still no consensus, and certainly we have had plenty of years where that consensus has been clear and obvious. So we'll see what happens with the Titans, and it'll be a fascinating way that they go about trying to solve this problem, essentially, because 3-14 is a problem. They got a bunch of different ways that they have to get it fixed. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. Have a great rest of your evening. Radio show tomorrow morning from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. Greg Cosell, will be there, and we look forward to that. I'm sure there will be news. There's always news coming out of the evening of the combine, and certainly we have a full evening ahead of us. So have a great rest of your evening, and I will talk to you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone.